Ed Miliband's a very interesting and unusual political leader. He's somebody who has tremendous empathy with people and with where I think Britain needs to go. And it's been very interesting seeing some of the ideas that he has been the first to voice about the squeezed middle. Not those right at the top and not those either on benefits, but those who are working hard and have been terribly squeezed by the economic circumstances and the current policies of this Westminster government. So he was the first to understand that and to talk about it, and now it's common parlance. He also, in his conference speech to the Labour Party back at the end of September, talked about the fact that there must be more responsibility at the top of business, and that businesses who take on apprentices, who behave responsibility, who don't go in an asset strip, but plan for the long term, invest for the long term and grow, should be rewarded, and those who don't, who just make a quick buck and pay their directors massive bonuses, should not. And even the Prime Minister started to recognise that. So I think he's making the weather, but we're in a situation, which is why I think a lot of the criticism of Ed Miliband is mistaken and unfair. We're in a situation where, only a year and a half ago or so, Labour lost an election in May 2010 terribly. We got one of our worst results ever in our history as a party. You don't bounce back from that overnight and suddenly become, have 50-point leads or anything of that kind. But we're consistently leading the Tories. We've got back the vote that felt betrayed by the Liberal Democrats and opted for them, fed up with us in power. We've got that vote back. Now we need to focus, including in Wales, where the Conservatives are quite strong. I mean, they're not strong enough to overtake us or come anywhere near doing that, but they're quite solid. They've recovered where they've traditionally been in Welsh history, which is just above a fifth of the vote. And so they're quite strong. We've got to start making inroads into them. And I think he will come good the longer he's able to establish himself. He's facing a very hostile media. There was one Prime Minister's Questions where he wiped the floor with David Cameron, absolutely wiped the floor, turned Cameron into a rather red-faced, blustering Prime Minister. And Cameron's good at Prime Minister's Questions, so that was a considerable achievement. Was it reported? No, it wasn't. The media were more interested in some other little incidental thing of the theatre of Prime Minister's Questions. So he faces a hostile media, in my view, overwhelmingly Conservative supporting in the print media at least, and that's always very difficult. But I think in the end we will come through, and that he will come through, and I think we have every chance of winning the next election. Whether we can form a majority government remains to be seen, but I think we have every chance of winning it under Ed Miliband. I'm very excited by this new media and what is attempted to be doing in the Neath area, because we had the Neath Guardian close a few years ago, the weekly paper that was almost the Bible for the community. You'd find out where the jumble sale was, or what your councillor was doing, or what your MP was up to. You could write in the letters page, and that went. It was filled to some extent by a very successful evening paper that appears in the morning, the South Wales Evening Post, which has got a big readership in these valleys. But I think there's an enormous opportunity for this kind of website-based new media, particularly for young people. Young people, I know it's true of my own sons, and they're in their early 30s, so let alone people younger than them, tend not to buy newspapers. Tragically, in my view, because newspapers are part of my life, and I think they have a rich cultural depth that you can't get on Sky TV or on the radio. But I think a website-based new media that is online has an enormous potential in this area to allow the community to talk to itself in a way that hasn't been possible. And I think there's fantastic potential for that, and also for the local business community to grow and learn more about its community, and for people to communicate. You know, the interesting thing is that its politics, if you like, has gone more national and more global, and our media culture is more sort of global at the level of television above all. Actually, politics has also got more local. People are more interested, concerned about, agitated about things going on in their own area. There's an important lesson for political parties there, which is why we are refounding the Labour Party in the project that I was asked to lead by Ed Miliband. But in terms of media, I think there's an enormous potential for tapping into the fact that people actually care about what is around their front door, what is beyond in their community. I'm not saying more than they used to, but in a way, as politics becomes more bewildering and remote, in the Westminster bubble and the Cardiff Bay bubble, and let alone the G20 and the Eurozone and all of these alarming global sort of torrents, people tend to be more anxious and to kind of come together in their local area, and I think this new media could be a great fulcrum for that. I feel a lot of sympathy for the Occupy movement, and it's a kind of very diffuse movement. It's not in any sense an organisation. But the people who pitched up outside St Paul's were making a statement that spoke for many people across the country. We don't like the way that the banks have behaved. We don't like the way that bonuses are paid on multi-billions, and actually graduates can't get a job here in Neath or elsewhere across Britain. And that's been true whether it's in Madrid or Paris or New York or London. So a lot of me is with them, both in spirit and more than that. In the end, it doesn't provide an answer. The answer has to be provided at government level, either in Westminster or in Cardiff or in Cannes, where the recent G20 summit was, or wherever the world's leaders might meet. But they have to listen to the people. And you know, the Occupy movement may have been an unusual section of society. Mostly those people who protest, like I have over the years, are not, they're not the norm. Most people don't protest, but they nevertheless like the fact that people do. And certainly I identify with them. I think it's a really good thing, and I think they should be listened to. Well, I think WikiLeaks and Julian Assange jolted the system in a valuable way. I mean, I felt quite in two minds about it, because having been inside government and knowing, for example, the importance when I visited a foreign country to have an honest assessment before I got there in an email, or in the old days would have been a telegram, from the ambassador, is very, very important. So you know who you're meeting, you know what the situation is. Then to find that all over the world's media, which means you can't have an honest communication as a British minister visiting that country, that's very problematic. So I felt sort of very schizophrenic about it. On the other hand, giving a kind of jolt to the system and saying you can't behave in a hypocritical way, doing one thing and then in public and doing quite another in private, that actually was a positive thing.